Good morning. This is Animal Uncontrol. Welcome to the morning voice chat. Joining me, I have Alien and Kidder. What's up, guys?
Hey,
Hey.
hello.
Yeah, we were talking about cults, and last week I found sort of a link. It's not a formal link, but how Best Friends Animal Society has its roots in a satanic cult that was actually founded by two ex-Scientology members. So it's always interesting. But today what I wanted to talk about was this, actually. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, I've been blown. The whole Animal Uncontrol scam has been blown wide open by the superstar writer, aka I Hate Dogs Exposed. Like, I'm busted. I'm just gonna have to, change my name and relocate to Brazil. There's nothing else I could possibly do to escape these people.
Yeah, you messed up. You're on his radar deep
Yeah,
now.
I'm in big trouble now.
You're in big trouble.
A big trouble.
Say what?
I was delusional to think I could get away with doing what I was doing. Let me see if I can play this. I don't know if the share will allow me to do this. Let me see. I'm gonna play this. I don't know how this is gonna come back on the recording, but I'll link this video. Actually, I captured this last night because I don't want to lose this. It's just it's too good to not justify a backup. Let's see what happens.
Animal Uncontrol is basically like any other anti-dog channel. But what sets him apart is the fact that he supports Nicole Tesla. And no, this is not the real guy. This is just an imposter pretending to be him. Anyway, Nicole Tesla has basically admitted to poisoning dogs and has given tips to other animal abusers. And the worst part is that Animal Control basically supports this guy and promotes him in one of his videos. Yikes.
Actually, the truth is, I've actually promoted Tesla multiple times because these guys are really good. I mean, he's a secondary contributor, but he has a lot of really good things to say. He's on the Discord. And he drops in every once in a while and chats. I'd love to get him on one of these voice chats. But what the superstar writer was pointing out was that
also, on an unrelated note, here's something that he said in one of his videos.
Sense they're kind of like the radical or a radical element of the dog cult is pushing dogs as spouses, I guess.
Oh, wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
Har, har, har. Well, yeah, I am serious. I'm completely serious because that's what they're doing. So anyway, this was apparently Tesla made a comment that involved poisoning dogs, at-large dogs. We don't know the context. And people's narratives change over the years. But this raises a couple of things that I've talked about before. One is the Tesla comment. If you watch this video, you can freeze it over where the comment is. This is a comment he made 4 years ago. And these people know about it. So, again, that just reinforces my belief that this kid, this clown, is just fronting for perhaps somebody else. I mean, I guess really very few people take him seriously. He's only got 59 subs, but somebody, again, maybe one of these big organizations like Best Friends Animal Society, is, scraping and cataloging all this material, all these videos, all the comments, and they're building, I guess you could perhaps call it a dossier on at least the more prominent, I don't know if prominent's the right word, but the more outspoken people, which isn't difficult to do. It's not a terribly difficult data processing problem to solve. But I find this very, very interesting. And the other thing too, is I like to talk about was, some things came up in the Discord the other day, and I'd like to just take the chance to reiterate is that, folks, you can discuss illegal activity, but only in the context of it's not something you should do, or that it's not recommended. Like I always say, look, be aware of what the laws are and don't break them. But with that said, if you do, STFU about it. Seriously, don't say shit, even if you have a mouthful. Don't self-incriminate. But, with that said, I don't promote or incite any kind of illegal activity, because one thing, it get people into a lot of trouble in the real world, and it'll also get things that'll get YouTube channels deleted, Discord servers shut down, because they're just looking for a reason. They're just looking for a reason. And so it's a good idea to self-censor at least a little. And again, inciting illegal activity is not cool. We could agitate to change the laws. Like, should it be legal to delete at-large mutts, particularly large ones? I think it should. But currently, you can't do that. Or you can't do it and get away with it. Or if you do it, don't get caught.
Triple S protocol.
Triple S protocol. Yep.
Or Rule 308, hey, either way.
Either way. Well, that's the first S. That's the first S.
Just put them back in the ocean from whence they came, just like our batteries power the eels.
Yeah. A while back I wrote, the best uses for a dead pit bull, but really at no point that I say that people should kill random dogs. I'm just saying, look, we delete
if
a couple.
they happen to be dead.
If they happen to be dead, yeah, make some good use out of it. Landfilling them is just wasteful, right? I mean, there's all kinds of good uses. You can compost them, barbecue them, render them into biodiesel. I mean, yeah, they're, like you said, they're dead already. They're not going to die again. So just, that the pit bull was worth nothing when it was alive, but now that it's not alive, maybe there's some value to it. Maybe there's some upside.
Reduce, reuse, and recycle, eh?
Yeah. Well, the problem is they recycle the live ones. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Dangerous dog laundering. So, and I haven't followed up on that neighbor with the 3 murder mutts. Maybe I'll drive by there today. It's a pretty nice day out. Maybe after we wrap up here, I'll head up there and see what the gig is. Probably Smart Money says they haven't done anything. Supposedly, though, that if the dogs are found to be at large again, they said a warrant will be issued. A warrant for what? The owner's arrest, I guess. Didn't say specifically. I mean, that's how I would interpret it. No. What, yeah, boy, we covered a lot of material last time. Jacqueline Durand, anti and pro mutt literature, barking dog bingo, dogsbite.org, dog sitting fails. Yeah, let's see. We missed you last time, Alien. Do you have any thoughts on any of those topics?
Yeah, I was thinking, I was talking about how it's good if people diversify within a movement into the more milquetoast part of the movement, and then other people go to the less milquetoast part. I think dogsbite.org, maybe we could think of that as like the Sierra Club of dog critique.
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call the overall movement.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I was thinking about that because the last time you were on, we were discussing Overton windows and, zeitgeist and that topic, how you have, I mean, in any movement, you have people who are more extreme than others. Even if you look at the dog people themselves, I mentioned four-legged plague earlier, and a while back, it was maybe a year or so ago, or maybe even a couple of years ago, he took a crack at kind of ranking dog nutters on their level of nuttery. He did it on a 1 to 5 scale. I don't know if it's a perfect metaphor, but it's a pretty good one because you have like your level 1 and 2 dog people are essentially working dog people. In other words, the dog is perhaps a tool to do a job, or, it's just another farm animal, essentially, right? So you got a farmer with a dog, but the dog sleeps in the barn with the rest of the animals. Maybe it helps out with herding the sheep, but it's not really a pet. But then you get into like the 3 to 5 range, you get into varying degrees of, crazy. Like your level 3s are probably more like a 1970s dog person where they like dogs, but they don't, they don't worship them like they're the furry Jesus. Then you get in the 4s and 5s, and those are like really crazy dog people, so that's interesting. But when you talk about the, different sort of delineations or gradations within our movement, what would extreme look like? I mean, you talk about last time you brought up Earth First, because they would do.
Okay. If you look at the environmental movement, you can look at like Rainforest Action Network. Back in the 90s, I don't know if they still do it, but back in the 90s, they would have a couple of experienced climbers rappel down the side of a tall building, and they would banner hang, stuff like that. That's pretty extreme. And then also they would do lockdowns in front of banks that they want to diversify from investing in companies that are cutting down rainforests.
Mm-hmm.
So those lockdown things, you might have, this isn't recommending anyone do this, but you could imagine that someone might lock down in front of a place that's basically running one of those pit bull.
Right. Well, in front of
adoption scams.
Yeah, adoption scams, like a shelter that adopts out murder mutts.
Yeah. Adopt them out for only $15, but if you want to return it, it's $500.
Yep. Yeah. That's do like a sit-in, or it's things you could do within the limit of the law. You can, protest, you can sit in. Back last decade, there was an element, and it's always limited to like pit bulls though. And I mean, the disgust aimed in that direction is not misplaced, but they had, I vlogged about this last year. There was a walk for victims of dangerous dogs, and I believe it was in Tucson. And my understanding is, actually, I got it mixed up. I got my cities mixed up. Like I always say, it's like sometimes whether it was like in Tucson or Topeka isn't the point I'm trying to make. But so they got a permit for this walk. I don't know if you'd really call it a protest. And it wasn't even really overtly political or even anti-dog, but the pit nutters and random dog nutters, made death threats. They campaigned like crazy to get the permit pulled. They, indulged in all kinds of various underhanded tactics to get the plug pulled on this thing. And I believe the walk did go through. it's sort of at a reduced level. It was a lot smaller because I think they also got many of the sponsors pulled out. And I believe there was another one was scheduled a couple of years later in one of the big Texas cities, Houston or Dallas. But again, exactly where it was intended to be isn't the point I'm trying to make. That they got completely shut down because it's the same thing. You know, they're intimidating sponsors, engaging in all kinds of lawfare and harassment. So, you know, what happened is, like, yeah, if we were to schedule, I mean, if we did an impromptu one without them knowing about it, perhaps you could get away with it. But I think what would happen is it would be counter protested to the max. You would have hundreds of pit nutters showing up with their dangerous dogs to, you know, threaten and intimidate people. That's my expectation. Because the thing is, a lot of these environmental groups, they're not really subject to, or correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not really subject to that type of counter protest or counter agitation activities, at least not that I know of. I mean,
Yeah, you usually only see that when it's like the anti-Nazis going up against the Nazis or something like that.
Yeah, or perceived, yeah, like Antifa or whatever. You know, Germany in the 20s, we had the fascists versus the communists or whatever. But yeah,
Well, I mean, you have that today.
Yeah, you have that today. Yeah,
in Europe, you have that today. The fascists versus the anti-fascists, and they'll battle in the streets.
Yep.
And the cops are there trying to keep everybody apart.
Yeah, they.
Yeah.
But the thing is that yeah, these because you get, the longer you're in the space, you realize that, you know, these pro dog interests do, you know, agitate. They'll go to some fairly extreme lengths to protect or, you know, promote their interests. You know, because again, you know, going after, you know, a walk that's in favor of, you know, in remembrance or a memorial to dead kids is pretty low. But they get away with it. I mean, nobody was arrested as far as I know. So they just, you know, essentially bully these you know, again, the people on our side into silence or submission. Because, you know, yeah, you know, Fido's got all the political capital. So, although I think, though, that, you know, shelter scams, it's kind of like the fake service dog people. That's something I think that, yeah, we could gain some traction because, I mean, they're committing fraud. They're committing fraud. They're adopting out these dogs, and they're not disclosing the bite history. And oftentimes it's known to shelter staff. They know the dog will attack kids or men or other pets. They know it. And yet they adopt the dog out anyway. They release the dog into the community instead of putting it down, which is what they should do. But like we're talking about that other time also, the only metric they care about is their euthanasia rate. They want to keep it as low as possible. But that's an interesting thought. You know, if you wanted to go like really extreme, like somebody could, you know, drive a truckload of explosives into the Best Friends Animal Society headquarters. Not that I recommend that, but something like that could happen. That would be extreme.
Extreme circumstances require extreme measures.
Yeah, something like that could happen. You know, even going back to what I was discussing earlier with, you know, the illegal behavior. That's why I said people on our side, you got to kind of self-censor a little bit because you don't want to promote illegal behavior. Like driving a truckload of explosives into any building is not recommended. But the thing too is that the dog people also need to realize that, you know, all these benefits they enjoy because they're on the upside or the benefit side of all these double standards. You know, they're allowed to do things and get away with them that nobody or nothing else is, but it's totally artificial. And the point I make to them is that you can't strip people of their rights forever. You can't. At some point, those rights are going to assert themselves. For example, again, I'm not endorsing the behavior, but say somebody poisoning a barky dog, very common. And it's, you know, probably the number one way the dog people impose themselves on others is with dog noise pollution, because they know they shouldn't be, they know it's unethical, they know it's a problem, but yet they pursue the activity anyway. Knowing that most places the government won't do anything about it, they'll go after other sources of noise pollution. Like if you're having a loud party or fireworks at 2 a.m, they'll shut that down. But a barky dog, no. But the thing is that just like the other noise sources of noise pollution, you're violating people's right to peaceful use of their space. And at some point, that right is going to assert itself, be it legally or what's the term, extra legally or illegally. Something is going to happen. Your dog, this, you know, I'm addressing dog people here. You're not going to get away with it forever. There's going to be a bad outcome. So yeah, somebody's going to poison the dog, or you're going to get sued for private nuisance, or there's going to be some kind of bad outcome. But going back to the poisoning thing is, yeah, I don't recommend or endorse such behavior for a lot of reasons. I mean, primarily, I don't want anybody in our space to get into trouble. But to the dog, but I don't blame people for resorting to that, particularly if the situation is bad enough. I mean, you can't. Sorry, go ahead.
I have a suggestion that I think will be very unpopular here, but it goes back to Ronald Coase, who was a co-winner of the Nobel Prize. And there's a theorem named after him called the Coase theorem. The Coase theorem deals with pollution and the economic solutions to it. It's not the case that the only economic solution is to find the polluter. You could have the pollutee pay like a non-pollution dividend to a potential polluter, and under threat that if the polluter pollutes, then they get their dividend cut off.
Right.
So that would be kind of like Jimmy Carter's peace dividend that he offered to Israel and Egypt, where the U.S. pays each country billions of dollars a year in order to not go to war. If they go to war, they lose the money. So if you want your neighborhood to be quiet, maybe offer $50 a month to a neighbor who has a dog.
Yeah.
And say as long as I don't hear it barking, you keep getting your $50. But if not, then you lose your $50. Plus, I'm going to try to get the government involved in fining you for it.
Yeah.
So then we can ask, like you mentioned in the Discord, what can we do? What can be done to quiet the dogs down? There's surgery, and then there's anti-dog bark collars.
Yeah, the best anti-bark surgery is to remove everything from the shoulders up. I mean, it's an interesting idea, but that kind of, at that point, you're kind of conceding that dogs in the neighborhood are somehow like useful, or that people have a right to own them. I mean, you talk about, say, other forms of pollution, say, air pollution, carbon emissions and whatnot. We put up with some of that, I guess, depending where we are on that spectrum, because I recognize that, some pollution is something we need to learn to live with if we're going to have a high standard of living. And I'm not saying that, we should just burn all the coal we want, but at least, say, with like coal burning, say burning coal to make electricity, there's an upside to that activity. Cheap electricity. And there's downsides because you get carbon emissions and toxic ash and radioactive isotopes and all those other things. So you do sort of a cost benefit assessment to say, okay, is this worth doing or not? Or if we are going to do it, should we set, we have scrubbers, carbon scrubbers on the smokestacks or whatever. But the thing with dog barking is it serves no purpose, right? It's not like, burning fossil fuels to make electricity or power vehicles. All they're doing is they're just converting dog food into noise. So that's why I'm not crazy about something like that, because really, owning dog ownership, really, it doesn't do anybody any good except for the dog owner, perhaps not even then. So it's a kind of thing where, it should bring discomfort to no one. That's where I'm coming from. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because there's a collective delusion that that it's just normal to have a dog.
Yeah, or even necessary. It's like, oh yeah, dogs. Or, well, the thing is, my position is that really owning any pet is a privilege and a luxury, period. Okay? It's not a right, nor is it something that anybody needs to do. Right? It contributes nothing. And I'm talking about your typical pet dog. Some people are going to chime in about service dogs or police mutts or search and rescue dogs and whatnot. That's like, the legit ones, it's like 0.1% of the dog population. But for 99.9% of dogs are totally useless. They contribute nothing worthwhile to society. Yet they cause all these problems. I may say it's a huge net negative. Again, it's not like, burning fossil fuels or nuclear energy. Really any source of electricity has some downsides to it. Even like, quote, your so-called like renewables. So that's a kind of thing. It's like, I could see doing something like that to, say, get like electric utilities to clean up their acts or chemical companies or whatever, because those things arguably add a lot of value. They're public goods, where dogs are not. If every dog just disappeared tomorrow, really just about everybody would be better off. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah, and as far as the cops using dogs, of course, it's been pointed out that they're not totally reliable when they're sniffing cars for drugs.
Yeah, they're not.
If you remember the dot-com boom in the late 1990s, there were two companies. One of them was called Cyrano Sciences, as in Cyrano de Bergerac, which were developing digital noses. Now, they failed. But I think it's only a matter of time that there are going to be digital noses that outperform dogs and obviously would be more reliable.
Yeah. Well, also because like if the sniffer dog is triggered, you don't really know what it is. That's the problem. Like you can't say, oh yeah, that guy's got Semtex in their duffel. So it's either a bomb or the making of it. You don't know that he could have a peanut butter sandwich in there. All it
or the handlers figured out how to signal the dog to signal.
Yeah. So that's a big problem. You don't just have false positives; you have false negatives also, where the dog is not reacting to something that it should react to. That's a problem also. So, going back to, it's like, like a peace dividend for dog people. It's like, I'm not crazy about it, because that would, maybe it's a compromise position, but I don't see any need to really compromise on something like that. Either the dog, if you're going to bring any pet into a human community, either it behaves or it's gone, period. It doesn't need to be that complicated. Many of them too, it's like your typical dog bully may not be that, unless the stakes are really high, probably isn't going to be motivated that much one way or the other. I don't think. One thing about this space is, I mean, obviously there's economic interest. There's plenty of grift here. But I think that most of the dog cult is driven primarily by ideology, which actually is something maybe you and I could do this. I want to do a segment on the 10 commandments of dog. last decade, I wrote the 10 commandments of dog because we'd been having a lot of conversations about how, dog people, they act like a religious cult, but probably in a sense they are. But the thing is, it was a point that I made at the time, was that, I mean, it's kind of like a religion, but it's not, or it's not a formal one, right? Because they don't have formal scriptures or rites or holy sites, at least not formal ones. It was interesting, maybe it was like a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago, I Hate Dogs put up a segment where he was critiquing this one nutter, this woman. She's a quote comedian, although she's about as funny as a turd in a punch bowl. I think her name is Rebecca Corey, I think. And I was watching what she was doing, and I'm thinking, this is like a religious sermon, because this isn't a comedy routine. She's up on stage basically talking about how great her pit bull is. It's almost like a preacher praising Jesus. She's literally like praising the furry Jesus. But anyway, I wrote this, actually I brought that up. I'd like to, yeah, this is always fun. This here.
And pit bulls aren't even that furry.
Yeah, they're not.
It's funny. It's like you pick the least furry dog or I guess some dogs don't have any hair at all, but
yeah,
pit bulls are pretty close.
Pit bulls are pretty good. It's a very short coat. Probably, that's probably one of the breed characteristics. I would think that a long coat would be a disadvantage in a fight.
Yeah.
I would think so. I mean, that's why, like, soldiers like Marines and Army infantry types get their hair cut short to get a crew cut or a short haircut. So, well, for one thing, it doesn't get caught up in things, basically. So I'm sure it's probably one of the, one of the desired inbred characteristics. But yeah, we should go, maybe not today. But I'd like to go through this with somebody. That We Hate Dogs guy host and I did that a while back, about a year ago, but that video is no longer up. So I'd like to repeat that, because these are important. So anyway, what happened was, everybody's talking about it's a cult, it's a religion. And I say, but they don't have any. They don't have any, formal scriptures or rites or anything yet. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do them a favor. I'm going to write up their ideology for them. So this is, typical for me. It's kind of snarky, so like commandment number 1, thou shalt worship each and every dog unconditionally. And, I came up with this list after, several years of talking to dog people, reading what they write, observing their behaviors. And yeah, pretty much everything they say and do reduces to, one or more of these, ideals. So yeah, we should go through this, but like, for example, number 10, and this actually should be number 1, but you look at the antics of, trolls. Like, I've been getting trolled a lot. I Hate Dogs. All these channels all get trolled relentlessly. People come in and try to sabotage the forums. Even I was saying before about, doing, staging protests and the like, is that they, counter protest with a vengeance. But all that relates to this: thou shalt go forth and wage war for the sake of dog. That's what's being expressed there. And these are important to understand because, you want to know your enemy. And these people aren't exactly, reasonable. But yeah, we should go through this at some point and, go through all these ideals. So. So, Kidder, how are your neighbors behaving?
Oh, just dandy. I'm really looking forward to summer when I have to go by their house to, simply exist in our neighborhood and go ride a bike or something.
Like we were talking about last time, or basically every time. It's like, yeah, you can't go a half a block without a dog behaving aggressively towards you.
Yep. And it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, again, they get away with things that, nobody else can get away with. It's really, like I said, they got all the political capital. So.
Well, with the police dogs, it's straight barbarian territory.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's. Well, the thing too is like with police dogs, talking about like sniffer dog fails and stuff, is that we put up. Did Chef put it up? Somebody put up a video. Actually, it was near me. It was in Jacksonville where a canine got loose. I mean, it wasn't doing police work. It just got loose. It got away from its handler and bit 3 people. One of them stabbed the dog. And of course, all they cared about in the news was, oh no, Officer Fido was injured. But he wasn't even on the job. He just attacked 3 random people. But even when they are doing police work, it's like, yeah, I mean, ripping a suspect to shreds is really not legit police work. I think regardless of where you are on that spectrum, it's like, all of it's medieval. It's a very, very primitive way to address the problem at best.
Yeah, we're a civilized society with guns, tasers, handcuffs, cars.
Yeah.
And we're going to choose a dog to do this for us?
Yeah.
Just shoot the guy. I mean, to put it simply, I guess.
I'd rather get shot than be like mauled by a mutt. Seriously.
I posted a story locally of a dog that was chasing a suspect and it bit a fucking officer and gave him like 3 different diseases and horrific wounds. It was a uniformed officer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because
you can't tell me these things are smart and trained if they're attacking their own people.
Oh, yeah, that happens too. Yeah, it's not just. I mean, it's bad enough that they tear up suspects. There's probably like a 5th and an 8th Amendment violation. But yeah, they attack random people. They even attack other officers. When I did my canine fails episode, when I was doing the due diligence on that, there are cases even where a human police officer, a 2-legged one, had to shoot the 4-legged one in self-defense. And I don't know. I mean, how common are these things? Like, people who are in favor of police dogs would argue, well, this is just anecdotal, right? It's just, they're just exceptions. It's very exceptional. But the thing is, those anecdotes, those exceptions add up.
Exactly.
To where you're at a point where, okay, this isn't just a handful of isolated incidents. There's a trend here. There's an actual pathology here. It's systemic. Because you hear about it all the time. Even in my county, police mutt attacked a 6-year-old kid that was lost. The cop puts the kid in the car. Boom, the dog attacks the kid. I mean, that was just like a couple of miles from me. I mean, this is not that unusual. And again, if anything else were doing this, it would be restricted, if not banned everywhere. But yet the problem continues.
There's that video of a guy had like an overloaded trailer or something, and he was like, I'm not staying here. I'm not stopping. Give him my ticket. I'm leaving. And he
Yep.
sicks the dog on him after he leaves.
Yeah.
Like-
Well, I featured that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they stopped. But the thing was, yeah, in that case, they had the guy on the ground. There's 5 cops there. What value did the dog add? Goes back to what I was saying before.
It's just Fido sadism. They
Yeah,
wanted to
that's
see him
it.
get torn the fuck up by a dog.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you'd even see in one part of that video, like one cop is waving the dog away, like he doesn't want the dog to be part of it. But the dog went, and then the dog bit down on the guy's head and didn't release. They're supposed to release on command. I guess did none of them know what the command was? So the cop had to pull, well, he pulled the dog. The dog would not let go of the man's scalp. They pulled the dog off, taking a chunk of the scalp with it. That's the thing when I see stuff like that, and I feature that kind of thing multiple times too. It's like, don't, if a dog or some animal is latched on, don't pull it off. Don't do it, because you're just making the wound worse. Probably, I mean, the thing to do in a case like that is you pull out a knife, cut the dog's throat, because that'll get him to release.
Yeah. Yeah, I had posted the story about the local guy getting torn up, and I got 2 friends come on there. You and dogs, LOL. Like, did you not even read the post? You're blind to anything and dang.
Yeah, you Dwayne.
Like, there were no opinions there. I'd literally said, I'd stated facts, and you just come in there and belittle me, and
yeah.
Well,
they never really,
insane.
They never address any of the points we're making. Because that's a question I posit. Like, is this an effective way to enforce the law or not? I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable question to have. Like, you mow on, you Dwayne.
I don't think there's basically nothing a suspect can do that would warrant gruesome torture.
Yeah.
And lifelong problems.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean,
missing body parts.
There's probably like 3 things off the top of my head that might warrant it, but you got a gun, don't you? They'll stop if you shoot them.
Yeah. Well, I guess in some circles the dog is seen as, I guess, non-lethal force. But of course, not everybody who gets shot dies either. And there's other reasons not to, particularly if you're in a crowded place, it's like the use of a firearm is kind of dicey because you don't want to injure, bystanders.
I'll tell you what's dicier though, a dog.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is at least a gun or a taser is a weapon you can control.
Precisely.
And a dog is not. I mean, that's why when you think about it, I mean, it's a biological weapon. And haven't such things been banned by treaty everywhere? Like, people go, and I don't even want to go down the rabbit hole of like COVID lab leak theories, but I mean, if it was an accident, that's one thing. But, if somebody's deliberately like, spawning and deploying, biological weapons, like they're creating Frankenbugs with the intent of taking out another nation or some large group of people, that justifies the use of nuclear weapons. I mean, that's our policy, is that any use of weapons of mass destruction is going to be responded to in kind. And that's the only legal weapon of mass destruction is a nuke. But and mainly because, biological weapons, they're not a weapon you can control. You don't really know what they're going to do. Now, typically when people think of biological weapons, you think of something like that, like say a weaponized smallpox or a super flu or some such thing. But it could be an animal. You could, concoct a creature that would, attack and kill people. autonomously. And not only that, but be able to spawn itself. Just like, a disease can, a virus can get into the body and spawn copies of itself. Just like dogs can. I mean, dogs don't spawn inside the human body, but it's the same thing. They're self-replicating. And none of these other weapons are. So I'm thinking like, yeah, I thought the use of biological weapons was banned everywhere. So why are these civilian police departments using them? Why are civilians using them? I mean, is such a thing protected by the Second Amendment? Right? Can I infect a home invader with, I don't know, weaponized anthrax? I don't think so.
The comparison I always use with the officers when I call them is I asked them if I had a chainsaw and I was running up and down the street, revving it up and chasing after people, you'd be at my door right now to bring me to prison. Like, yep. But a dog can do this all day long. And if I call you, just whatever.
Yeah, they're like, it's no.
Precisely whatever. Get off my phone, dude.
Yeah, I mean, the incentive is always to give, Fido the benefit of the doubt, which actually kind of segues into something else I wanted to discuss, going back to, legal uses of force involving dogs. Like people are talking about, say, like, poisoning dogs or shooting dogs or whatever.
Chainsaw?
Yeah, chainsaw. Well, that would, somebody taking out a mutt with a chainsaw, that would be based. That would be, it's not just, that would be like biblical almost. But, because like say, particularly one of these murder mutts, the chainsaws, well, the chainsaw mics are so loud, they might retreat from the noise. But you get an electric one, like some of these new, battery-powered saws have a fair amount of
You wouldn't have to start it either.
Yeah.
Rapid deployment.
Rapid deployment. Yeah, that'd probably tear Fido up pretty good. But, if you get into like any...
Just like Fido would tear you up pretty good if he got to you.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
All's fair in love and war, my guy.
That's what some people call them. They're, chainsaws with legs. And if you look at some of the outcomes, I mean, again, arms and legs missing, scalps missing, disembowelments, it's a... Yeah, I mean, it's a chainsaw type injury. But, the thing is, people talk about, self-defense against dogs and the like, but you got to be careful there too, even if it's a legit, I mean, I would encourage people, what, if you or somebody, if a person is attacked by a dog, I mean, do what you got to do to spare human life, particularly yours. I mean, yeah, you might risk, would I risk prison to avoid being the next Jacqueline Durand or Kylene Waltman? She was a woman who lost both arms in a dog attack. Yeah, I would do that. I wouldn't risk prison to just delete some random mutt though, but you got to be prepared. And this comes up in these forums also, even, in the old blog, people are talking about, obtaining a firearm or other weapons. But you got to be really careful because, at least in my state, self-defense against a dog is not protected. It's not expressly illegal. Like, it doesn't say, okay, you can't shoot a dog that's, say, mauling a kid. But it also doesn't say that you can't. It's kind of a gray area. So you're essentially at the mercy of the court. But with that said, again, the incentive is to, among authorities, is to give Fido the benefit of the doubt. They're going to say, look, Fido was just playing and you just murdered him, you evil dog-hating Nazi. That's a problem, particularly in changing laws when, the zeitgeist or Overton window is affixed firmly over. Everybody has to grovel at the feet of the furry Jesus because they're going to abuse discretion to go after you. And I've looked into a ton of cases like that. Even if some dog people are like, well, if my dog is attacked by another dog, I'm going to shoot it. And I'm like, people get arrested for that. that is not protected self-defense, at least not in most places. You can protect livestock, interestingly, and people have brought that up, that farmers do have a right to delete dogs that are, say, tearing up their chickens or whatever. But that goes into the fact that ag lobbyists and so forth agitate for those laws. But even then, you can get into trouble because they'll if you've got a nutter cops, nutter DA, they'll try to find a way to jack you up, right? Like inappropriate discharge of a firearm. Discharging a firearm in presence of a minor, endangering a minor, animal cruelty. And, it's frivolous, but don't think they won't do it. So, people got to, really think hard about it. You have to do a sort of a risk benefit assessment and say, yeah, it's like deleting this dog really something I want to do. Because I guarantee provided you get caught. If you're in the middle of nowhere, 3 S's, but you have to, but most likely it's not. It might save your life. You might get out of it, physically whole, but it's not going to make your life better. Because they're going to, again, it's sort of a form of like a reverse critical theory, or they always put the actions of the dog and the dog owner in the best possible light. And if you use force against the dog, they're going to impugn or imply or attribute the worst motives on your part, more often than not always, but.
When I talked to my dad about getting some kind of firearm, the first thing he says is that you better have insurance, legal insurance, that is. Because anything you do with a gun is going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's not bad advice either. Because there's you can get like concealed carry insurance, where they'll basically pay your legal fees. They have lawyers on call, like self-defense experts essentially, and so get you bailed out, get you legal help, so you're not stuck spending tens of thousands of dollars trying to defend yourself. I mean, many states have stand your ground laws and castle doctrine. But the thing is, ironically, those will protect you if you shoot another human being or use some kind of force, stab them, drop a piano on them or whatever. But not if you shoot a dog. It's like shooting dogs. It even in the most egregious circumstances, it's not protected in a lot of cases. If you're trying to protect yourself or another human, like I was saying earlier, it's like, ranchers have more right to protect, say, livestock than they do themselves. But yeah, your dad's right. It's getting some kind of, it's probably something, I don't have it, but I probably should. You got to really think it through because, again, it depends on the jurisdiction. There was a case, I've been wanting to bring this up for a while. You talk about how did these like stand your ground and castle doctrine laws come to be. And there was a self-defense case, actually a long time ago, might have even been back in the 80s, where a serial rapist was working an area, and his mode of operation was, what he would do is he would break into the homes of, single women, who lived alone, and, kind of quietly or stealthily break in. He'd pry open a window or whatever, and he would hide. And then when they came home, he would ambush them and forcibly rape them. So, and this had been there had been several incidents of this. And what happened was, one point, broke in, but the intended victim had a firearm within reach. She shoots him, right? She shot him, she did exactly what you're supposed to do. You aim for center of body mass. And I don't have a source on this. I recall reading it years ago. So I can maybe take this with a grain of salt, but she shot him center of body mass, which is exactly what you should do. And the bullet blew out his spine. It paralyzed him made him into an instant paraplegic, which stopped the attack. But what happened was the DA declined to press charges. Because this was before some of those laws had been passed. He's like, you know what? I'm never going to get a conviction on her anyway. No jury is going to convict her of anything. So he's like, just forget it, go home. But what happened was the quote victim, or the whatever you want to call him, sued her and won because he was able to prove in court that she was responsible for what happened to him. So she didn't face criminal prosecution, but she got, I don't know if she lost everything or what, but yeah, having insurance in that case. But the thing is, those Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground laws, I believe, I guess it depends on what state you're in or how they're worded, will protect you from, civil liability also. So yeah, your dad's right. Maybe if you just shoot somebody's dog, they can perhaps go after you for, loss of companionship or whatever.
Sexual partner.
Loss of consortium.
Yeah, I asked him if he carried a gun because he's been known to, he's had a gun for a while, so, but he doesn't carry because, somebody else with a gun might use theirs more actively, or they'll just take yours and use it against you.
Yeah, well,
there's all kinds of problems there.
Yeah, well, that's a good argument against open carry, because they might, if they see your arm, they might go for the deletion right away. Whereas if it's concealed, but yeah, you gotta be careful with that stuff. I think we got maybe a few too many, keyboard commandos in the space. But I say too is, if you're attacked, do what you got to do. You want to remain. You don't want to be the next Kylene Waltman. Would you, risk going to jail to prevent that? It's like I would. But deleting random mutts, until that's expressly legal, not recommended. So that's what was going on in my neighborhood. This one woman wrote in one of those Nextdoor threads, she said, I'm getting my gun out, I'm going to shoot them. And some other folks were like, bad. Not that, do the dogs deserve to be shot? Should they? Yes. But that's not, but they're protected. So, you do something like that, it's very, very risky. You're setting yourself up for a big legal liability. So you really got to think about what you're doing. So.
What do you think about price sticks?
Sorry, say that again.
I
was just thinking, I guess, thinking about how it's a shame that I have to be armed to take out the garbage or go for a bike ride or, exist on my property,
Yeah, or even inside the home. Home invasion attacks are not unheard of either. Particularly, and sometimes like the anti-pit bull people say only pit bulls do it. Typically it's probably disproportionately pit bulls, but they'll actually force their way and they'll home invade you and attack you. It's not unheard of. Then they'll say, well, it was your fault because you didn't have bars on your window.
Yeah. As I recall, I don't own a dog. I don't need to pit proof my house.
Yeah. Well, they'll say you do. See, again, it's their sense of entitlement. Everybody else has to jump through a bunch of hoops and bend over backwards to essentially accommodate the dog. So, hey, Aileen, you said something earlier. Did you mention brake sticks or what
Yeah.
were you? Brake
Yeah, I
sticks?
was wondering, what do you think about people carrying brake sticks?
Well, actually, they're recommended if you have a pit bull because it's a tool. It's like a wedge you could use to pry the dog's mouth open. I mean, you shouldn't have to carry that either. And it's not really because it'll get the dog. I would think that like police dog handlers should carry them.
Yeah.
Random people, I'd rather just probably said if a dog, my response would be, if a dog is biting down on, attacking somebody that way, they're doing the bite and hold, I would use a knife. I would cut the dog's throat and let it bleed out. It'll probably pass out within 10 seconds, and that'll end the attack. Because you get to you pry the dog's mouth open, but it could redirect onto you or somebody else. I'm all for something that'll just put the dog down. But
Right.
brake sticks were used by dog fighters if they wanted to get the dog, if the dogs were fighting and they wanted to, if the referee wanted to, if it was the end of the round or whatever, they'd pry the dog's, mouth open.
So it's a Michael Vick tool.
Yeah, it's a Michael Vick tool, exactly.
But if you had to stop a dog attack in a supermarket, which is increasingly common these days, you'd end up with blood all over the floor of the supermarket.
Yeah, yeah. Another biohazard. A lot of gore. Well, you're going to wind up with blood all over the floor, probably, regardless of the means used. Merrick Clifton recommended using a fire extinguisher. Yeah, let's all carry fire extinguisher. He's the host of the Animals 24/7 site. I'm like, yeah, let's carry fire extinguishers everywhere. I think I'll just start hiking with one to keep the mutts away. Because what you do is you squirt the chemicals or the CO2 or whatever up the dog's snout, and that'll get it to release. But I guess, if there's one within reach, I guess I would use it. But I don't know. You could shove it up the dog's ass and blow him up. Inflate a bull. that would
Jaws, yeah. Yeah, it's like Jaws the land shark.
Yeah, Jaws the land shark. Yeah.
Insert the CO2 and the CO2 canister and get some distance away.
Yeah. Yeah, that would stop the attack. Thing is, pit bulls will continue to attack even after they've been badly injured. Even after they've been shot multiple times, have legs broken. They just once they go game. But yeah, like the thing with the brake stick too is you really got to know how to use it. It's probably more a tool for an experienced dog handler. So
Anyway, something that would help is if the police would start enforcing the laws.
yeah, yeah.
So going back to dogsbite.org, I think they might be able to change public opinion about that, where the public might start seeing both sides, and the police might start enforcing the laws.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is people are clamoring for more laws, but you're right, it's an excellent point to make. And it's painfully obvious that, we're not in a rule of law scenario, at least in this space. It's WROL, it's without rule of law. because dog owners are allowed to break the laws with impunity. That's why I get so pissed at a lot of these, ban pit bulls types, because many of them are hypocrites, because they'll say, oh, yeah, I should be able to do whatever I want with my dog, regardless of what the rules say. And they're like, okay. But then, because again, they agitate for that arrangement. They say either there should be no rules or the rules aren't enforced. Oh, and one more thing, let's ban pit bulls. Really, before you add any more laws, yeah, you want to return to order first. You want to say whatever the laws, like, well, what I do if I were county commissioner or mayor or governor, if, day one, I would say, look, all these laws are going to be executed. And that's it. And I'm not going to debate it with anybody. I don't have to go to the legislature. It's like, if this is what's stipulated, then that's what happens. And, and that would save a lot of lives too. Like, I bring up a lot of these cases. Well, wasn't the last one, maybe it was the one before. Well, in San Antonio, there was a dog bite related fatality. And this other woman put up a video about how she and her family are being terrorized by a next door neighbor's dogs. And the thing is, all these really bad outcomes would be prevented if they just enforced existing laws most of the time. Right? Because the laws stipulate that the dog should be forcibly removed if X, Y, and Z happens. But they're not. Because there's little to no interest in enforcing these things. That's a point I make, is that, look, the law is not a magic talisman, particularly if you want to get rid of pit bulls. And here's a question. I mean, I'd be interested to see what you think about this. But, BSL, breed bans, for example, are only going to work if they're very they're rigorously enforced and relatively painful penalties are stipulated. In other words, it's like no more $200 fine for having an illegal dog breed. You got an illegal dog breed, you're going to prison, period. Okay? We need active enforcement. No more of this shit where it's like, okay, we need 147 people to complain before anything's done. No, it shouldn't even take one person to complain. If a cop sees a pit bull with a pair of nuts on him, right, because often they'll stipulate mandatory spay-neuter, you arrest him. You don't wait for everybody for a half-mile radius to complain about it before you maybe do something. But the issue, and that would be effective. It's like, it's not that these laws don't work or can't work. I mean, they don't work because nobody wants them to work, but they could. But that raised, because the thing is like breed bans, I think, and you and I discussed this in the text chat, is that, BSL fails, like, breed bans are a very different dynamic than bans on other things. So you think about, bans that fail, like drug prohibition, gun control, pornography, or whatever. Because, typically if you ban something that people want, you have a big black market. It's one of the, bad side effects of those type of laws. Now, the thing is, like with dogs, a dog acts with volition. It has, it's autonomous. Dogs are also very noisy. So like an illegal pit bull breeding operation would self-incriminate pretty easily. But that would only matter if you were rigorously enforcing these laws. Like when we say no pit bulls, we fucking mean it. But that raises the issue, though, and it's something we should have a public discussion on, is that, okay, we're just going to crush these people. We are going to kick down doors, raid people, just prosecute the shit out of them. We're just going to crush them. But it sort of raises the issue, is that good public policy? Is that a good idea? I mean, think about how many bad police encounters that's going to cause, particularly because the reason you have to, resort to those methods is because you're dealing with some of the most aggressive, belligerent and defiant people around.
Well, that's the reason for no knock is you don't give them a chance to grab their guns.
Yeah, yeah. Or the thing is, yeah, but it wouldn't have to be like no knock raids even, but you're right. Yeah, you'd have, bad police outcomes, but it kind of raises the issue which you have is, and it goes back to say like, gun control fails or drug prohibition fails or whatever, is you're essentially punishing somebody for what's, at least in theory, a victimless crime. Right? You have somebody, maybe they're breeding pit bulls, but
it's pre-crime.
Yeah, it's pre-crime. Yeah, it's pre-crime.
So yeah. So that creates a precedent of kicking down doors to arrest people for pre-crime.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, where there's no, but it actually gets worse than that because I make no secret that I have almost unlimited contempt for not everybody who wants to ban pit bulls. I mean, hell, I want to ban pit bulls, but these same people will tell you, like, okay, what do you do if a dog goes off property and attacks a kid? And they say, well, you don't do anything because for a lot of one is it's not going to undo the harm, right? It's not going to unmaul the kid, right? Which again is sophistry. It's an argument technique. It's a dishonest debate tactic because it's technically true, but it doesn't matter because raising the victim from the dead is not what we want to accomplish. You've got, a crime. You've got a bad outcome that injured somebody. You've got somebody who's, using these means to injure others, perhaps even kill them. And the thing is, going after somebody like that is worthwhile for a couple of reasons. It gets that bad actor off the street. We get a break from his behavior. And it's a disincentive. It sets, an example or a precedent for the others to follow. Because we want to send the message, like using your dog as an offensive weapon is no longer tolerated. Those days are over. But the funny thing is those people they'll actively debate me on. It's like, oh, you're wrong. Arresting dog owners doesn't accomplish anything. It's not going to undo the harm. So why do it? And besides, it's just a waste of public money. But which is their opinion. I mean, I think it's a superb use of public money. Like you take somebody like, say, Jennifer Romano. She's a serial criminal. You can just Google her. I blogged and vlogged about her multiple times. That, prison is a perfect place for her. People like her are the reason we have prisons. And yeah, you can go after the means too, as you can restrict pit bulls. But that's why one reason nothing gets done in this space is it's really confusing to say, okay, because what they're saying is like, okay, we won't punish the incident. We won't punish the post-crime, but we will punish pre-crime. That's what they're saying. So it's like saying, you know what, shooting random people is perfectly okay, but let's, limit handgun capacities to 10 rounds. What point does that, what's the sense of that? That's stupid, but that's the point they're trying to make. But it goes back to, it's like, yeah, I mean, at least in theory, owning a pit bull, or really any animal, is itself, it's a victimless crime. But that's why I hate these people so much, because they want to punish the victimless crime, but not the crime where there is a victim.
Dog dealer, drug dealer, tell me the difference.
Yeah. Well, the thing too is that, people will, confuse it with, say, drug prohibition or prohibition on pornography or something else. But the thing with dogs, though, is like that's a whole reason we're here, is that, owning a dog covertly is virtually impossible to do. That's the whole problem. Because somebody gets a dog, everybody within a 200-yard radius knows it. Which means that, yeah, a pit bull ban should be relatively easy to enforce. I mean, way easier than, like, say, a drug prohibition or gun control. But it's not because, at the end of the day, none of these people think that going after a dog owner is something you can do. Because they'll abuse discretion for that, too. You say, hey, officer, there's an illegal pit bull over there. But he'll say, it's not bothering anybody. It's not bothering anybody. So, I'll just let it slide. But that's the problem, is that kind of attitude needs to change. So.
Okay, well, BSL doesn't address all the other dog problems in society.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's the other problem with it. Yep. No, agreed 200%.
Yeah, and also the common defense is going to be my pit bull isn't really a pit bull.
Oh yeah, well, breed ID game. Yeah.
But if you could have this legislation, you wouldn't necessarily need to kick people's doors down. You could have an amnesty day once a year.
Yeah.
Say, your animal's illegal and you can bring it in on amnesty day and there won't be any consequences for you.
Yeah. Well, typically those provisions always involve like grandfathering. In other words, they make and they emphasize the point is we're not taking anyone's pets away. So they have provisions like, okay, you have to spay neuter it. You can't get another pit bull, right? There can be no new pit bulls, but we're going to grandfather in all the old ones. So you have to spay neuter, muzzle in public. There's, enhanced penalties for dog at large and so forth, right? But that's, part of the problem is that, eventually it's going to involve taking people's pets away. I mean, for it to work, you're going to have to start arresting people because most of them are not going to comply. And some of them in a very defiant way. I was reading something the other week where there was a woman who, deliberately, sort of as a form of protest, actually brought an illegal pit bull into one of these jurisdictions. And it was, the stipulation was, it was like, okay, if you're caught, it's a $500 fine or whatever. And the dog is impounded and destroyed. Okay. So she brings a dog into this jurisdiction. Of course, getting authorities to do, respond to anything dog related is like pulling teeth. We all know that, particularly you, Kidder. So she parades the dog around, say, hey, look at me and my illegal pit bull. So finally the authorities act, right? They fine her, they impound the dog and kill it. But what does that do? It gives her the, I'm the suppressed victim. I was victimized by this horrible, racist Nazi law, it's, but that's the thing it's
victimized.
like, yeah, well, it's, part of one of the unintended consequences of going after, a dog breed is that, they're going to play that oppressed victim. But yeah, again, it's going after pit bulls by themselves. It doesn't, I agree 200% because it doesn't address all the other problems with dogs in society. Particularly the other murder mutts, right? Because I think there's dog breeds that are actually worse than pit bulls, but you don't hear from them much.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I was going to make that point earlier. You ban the pit bull, it's going to trickle down to the, I don't know, the Huskies or the whatever the hell.
I think that
is it Canarios or
Praces? Yeah, I mean, I think that some of these dog breeds like Praces, Corsos, Dogos, and the like are actually more dangerous than pit bulls. But again, there's some important differences there. One is those are high-end pedigree dogs. Very few people have them. It's not like, pit bulls are everywhere. There's millions of them. These other dogs, there's way fewer. Breeding is typically controlled by, a handful of professional dog breeders. Like you don't have well, at least up until maybe very recently, you don't have those puppies being sold out of, minivans and Walmart parking lots. And of course,
Yeah,
too, is it,
I
it's
was
a
just saying,
higher, but, because of that, you also, so you have very few of them. And you also have, I guess, I hate to say it, but a higher class of dog owner. Like if you consider my neighbor with the murder mutts, this is somebody with no means. Like I said, literally, the improvements on that property are valued at zero by the tax assessor. Zero. So this is somebody who's literally destitute, yet they got 3 pit bulls. Somebody like, again, they've got no means. They're not, they're not, they're not able to control or contain them in any way. Yeah, again, somebody with a Presa owner is probably somebody more likely to at least have the means to control the dog, like contain it in a way that it's not dangerous to others, where pit bull owners often don't. And I think the people who are into those dogs do understand, or they're at least slightly transparent about the fact that their dog is at least potentially dangerous in theory, where pit bulls are all nanny dogs. So, but thing is, that could change though, because that's the current, I guess, climate in the dog cult. But I could see, I think regardless of any law changes, I could see, and I'm not necessarily predicting this, but maybe, 5 years from now, somebody can re-listen to this stream and say, that's interesting, because I think it's definitely possible that somebody could take one or more of these other dog breeds, they start breeding them like rabbits. You get large numbers of them, the general population, particularly they're being owned by people who aren't well positioned to own an animal like that, because very, very few people are. And actually, the situation gets worse. So the pit bull population goes down just because those dog people, the fad is over. Now they're all, they want the latest model essentially. So I could see, I'm not predicting that, but I could see that happening. It's definitely possible. So
that's precisely what I was going after. You ban one and it'll just, the next one will be popular, and then that'll be bred into oblivion, and so on and so forth, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, or even if they don't ban pit bulls. I mean, right now, as far on the BSL front, all I see are losses. Not that, typically these bans don't really accomplish much anyway. I think in some sense it might be counterproductive, but
even the bans that are in place are not enforced, so then they're not bans.
Yeah, they're not. Like I said too, but to really ban them effectively, it goes back to what we were discussing earlier, is again going after these people for, like Alien said, for pre-crime, good public policy.
They should, and if they want to lop these labels on, so be it. Not be something phobe, fascist, whatever. Sure. I'm that. I'll take that label. Yeah. That's fine. It's for betterment of society.
And the other thing too is that, I think it was, what state was it? Oklahoma. Well, I know, like, I Hate Dogs put up a segment about the Miami ban, and I've discussed that a million times, because it's a constant sort of, political battle being fought over these things. There's another one in Oklahoma where, which actually was also, because Oklahoma is not a preemption state. So at least I don't think so, which means that preemption means that lower jurisdictions are prevented from, passing these racist laws. Like dogs are essentially treated like people. You can't, breeds of dogs are treated like races of people under the law. You can't have any dog law has to apply to all dogs equally. as if like dogs are protected by the 14th Amendment. But in a sense, they are. They shouldn't be, but they are, because that's the point these people are trying to make, is that they're being the dog fanatics, is that, you know, it's these laws are unconstitutional. Like these breed restrictions, even if it just enhanced insurance requirements, you can't do it. You know, dogs are all equal under the law, which is stupid. Because if you look at any other animal, and this is a point I make often, and I don't know if I was the first person to make this point, but back in 2012, when the Nutters tried to get the Miami ban repealed, that was the point they're making, saying, well, this is unconstitutional. You know, discriminating against certain breeds of dogs this way. And I said, you know what? I can't have goats or sheep in my suburban backyard. I think I used a horse as an example. I can't keep a horse in my suburban backyard. So why the hell do they get to keep pit bulls? But why is nobody challenging the constitutionality of these restrictions on other animals? You know, I did some research into you know, what would I have to do if I wanted a pet tiger? I want a pet tiger. I can't just go out and adopt one. I would need a zoo permit from the state. I would need a variance from the county, and variances are typically not easy to get. It's a lot of hoops you got to jump through. I would also need to build an enclosure, you know, basically a pen or a cage to certain specifications, right? I can't just keep it any way I want. To say, no, you have to house the animal in a structure that meets or exceeds these specifications. Okay, and I would also have to submit to regular inspections by the government. So yeah, you know, you could say large cats aren't completely banned, but again, there's gradations of legality, right? I mean, there's a ton of hoops.
There's actual guidelines.
Yeah, well, the thing is that it's very difficult to do. I mean, because you got to do all that before I get to take my, you know, pet tiger home, right? Because
and you can't take this pet tiger out on walks. You can't have it in your home. You have to have it in a pen.
Yep.
You can't.
All these.
Whereas you can take your $15 to the local best friends, and you can take home your baby mauler, and that's it.
Yep. But the thing is, it's interesting. It's like, what's the concept with going back to the cat restrictions? Because yeah, the largest cat you can own without a big pile of permits is about maybe 25 pounds. And then it's cut off. Then all these, again, large cats aren't banned per se, but they're very difficult, and something's very difficult to pursue legally. But it's the kind of thing, if you had a pet tiger, that would be very difficult to do covertly. But thinking, what's the constitutionality of that? Like, why aren't cat people setting themselves on fire in front of the state capitol? Where's all the 14th Amendment lawsuits there from cat people, horse people, goat people? What's the constitutionality of that? And the reason is that, yeah, bringing any animal into a community is a privilege. It's a privilege. Okay, it's not a right. And everybody, pretty much across the political spectrum, respects that. Right? Because everybody understands that, at least state and local governments at least, have broad powers in regulating the keeping of animals, like, say, cats or horses or goats or whatnot. Everybody accepts that. You know, no cat.
Because
cat
it would
people,
be a detriment to the society.
Yeah, because again,
nobody realizes that a dog can also be more of a detriment.
Yeah, human society, human communities are built for human consumption. And we make exceptions for, small pets, because I guess it's understood also. It's like, okay, house cats, rabbits, iguanas, maybe some snakes. They're pretty innocuous creatures, right? At least towards humans. I mean, maybe if you're a small bird or a field mouse, a cat, Yeah, cat's a ruthless predator, but yeah, you're not worried about, you don't need to pack a rod to walk the neighborhood because of fucking cats, okay? No jogger ever got chased down and mauled to death by a pack of cats. It doesn't happen, ever. So it's understood that the keeping of animals, at least the state and local governments, if you're a strict constitutionalist or constructionist, maybe a federal ban might be unconstitutional, but the state or local level, it's totally constitutional. If we can get rid of the big cats, we can get rid of the big dogs too. Enough said. But the problem is a lot of these BSL people are dog nuts. Okay, they don't like that argument because what I'm saying is that Fido is just a dumb animal that can be regulated like the rest of them. He's not an angel sent from heaven, nor is he a person. He's not a person with rights. Owning him is not a right. And yeah, the community can set some restrictions. And but again, there's always that sort of canine exception or canine immunity. The Fido always gets a pass. I mean, maybe I should go start debating some of these go to some of these, legislative, debates. I'd say, hey, asshole, what's the constitutionality of these restrictions on big cats? Explain the constitutionality of that to me. Or horse restrictions.
If you want to introduce restrictions, maybe could be based on weight.
Yeah.
I think you suggested that before, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the problem. One problem with BSL is, or in one way, dogs are different from some of these other animals, is you've got, I think the Kennel Club recognizes over 200 dog breeds, pedigree dogs. But then you get into mixed breeds and designer breeds, and it's legislatively, it would be a mess. So yeah, probably, doing it by weight. And I think, we've discussed that before. And some folks, maybe Kidder, raise the issue. It's like, okay, say the cutoff is 35 pounds, which is perfectly reasonable because you can't even have, it's about the weight of a bobcat. And pet bobcats are restricted. But the thing is, what if the dog weighs 35 pounds and 1 ounce? Right? Maybe
you didn't take your crap this morning and it weighs 36.
Well, what you do is, you set that limit. You make it a hard limit, like they do. Say we could use gun laws as a guide, right? Like if you get into like NFA items for say rifle barrel lengths or shotgun barrel lengths, you see all these rifles with the barrel length is like 16.25 inches or maybe 16.5. And you're thinking, why not a 15-inch barrel? Well, the why is that the NFA stipulates that a short-barreled rifle under 16 inches is a restricted item. You can't just, go to Academy Sports and buy one. It gets into a gray area because they're talking about like wrist braces for pistols actually being a stock. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of NFA rules. But the thing is that, so if I were to take my hog rifle, I'm going to say I do it right now. Hypothetically, I always say don't break the law. I'm just going to take it out to my shed, grab a hacksaw, and saw it off at 15 inches. And most people will be like, well, what's the big deal? It's no more dangerous than it was before, maybe less so. But the big deal is that again, if I don't jump through all the, ATF, NFA paperwork, hoops first, I'm now a major felon. The laws stipulate a minimum of 5 years in prison for an unlicensed device like that. So what you do is you say, yeah, okay, well, we'll cut it off. We'll cut off the max weight for dogs at 40 pounds. But yeah, if your dog is 40 pounds and 1 ounce, boom, you're finished. So what that means is like really say if the hard cutoff at 40, but a soft cutoff maybe at 30, you don't even want to think about adopting a dog that can get anywhere near that weight.
Probably want to start the bidding at 20.
Yeah.
Start the negotiations at 20, and
Yeah. Go
and
on
I
there.
think 20 would be reasonable.
Yeah.
Because I think the perfect dog, if somebody's going to have a dog, would be like a miniature poodle.
Yeah.
I think that would be a perfect police dog.
Well, maybe the
Yep.
rule is it's like if the
Miniature
dog,
poodle is 10 to 15 pounds.
yeah, if the dog
So
can be
that's-
hunted over an 8-foot fence, you can keep it.
Yeah. It's an interesting comparison because you are cutting the gun and then the dog just grows.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the
But-
same thing, but in reverse. Yeah.
I feel like somebody adopting a dog knows how big they're going to get. Usually, unless they're stunted or God knows what.
Yeah.
So, like, they know what they're getting into.
Yep.
You're going to get rid of this thing when it gets too big. You
Yep.
agreed to this.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You can get rid of it when it gets too big. But then it raised the issue like, okay, now you're punishing people for pre-crime, your, victimless crimes. You're taking people's, beloved pets away and so forth.
Yeah, but laws are laws.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can have a
Exactly.
fence that's over 6 feet tall.
That's the thing. And it's like, yeah, I mean, 20 pounds for a dog. It's like, I mean, again, the biggest cat you can have. I don't know if they actually have like weight limits for cats, but your Felis catus, the subspecies or whatever. The largest you can get is probably a Maine Coon, which, probably top out about 20. Maybe they go a little over, but so it's like, why, and particularly when you also factor in how aggressive dogs are. There's this one walk I go on where I'm like routinely aggressed towards by these two Jack Russell Terriers. They run up like right to me. They've never actually bit me, but they get really close. They're barking and they're snarling and they're growling. Yeah, again, I've never had a cat or any other species of pet act that way. It's always a dog. So really, you would think, you'd want, given the, behavior patterns of the species, you'd actually want a dog to be smaller than a cat. Like Alien said, they may be like a toy poodle that, what do they weigh, like 5-6 pounds or something?
Yeah, the toys are the smallest.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a miniature size, which is in between. It's 10 to 15.
Okay.
Well, instead of breed-specific laws, you could have behavior-specific laws then.
Yeah.
Done.
Well,
If it's
I think
aggressive, you can't have it.
Yeah. Well,
Done.
you
Figure that out.
Yeah.
So then you need a standardized test for behavior, which is not impossible, but that would need to be developed.
Well, part
I
of the
think,
problem
unless
with
there was
that
one.
is
If some random person walks up to your fence and it starts aggressing, then we take your dog away.
yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing
That
is
works.
like, I think, and this is why, again, I split from a lot of the BSL people, because, again, I think regardless of what BSL arrangement is in place, if any, dog owners desperately need to be held accountable, regardless. Okay. And that's where that comes in. It's like, because what they're saying is like, dogs aggressing towards people and even injuring them is below consideration, but we need to ban pit bulls because they injure too many people. It's like, no, first you ban the behavior, then you say, okay, maybe that's not good enough. So then perhaps we go after the means also with the breed limitations or weight restrictions or and the like. But that's really what you do next. Like the first, really you want to back all the way up and you want to say, okay, are dogs or any pet, but it's always a dog, aggressing towards random people something we want or not? Do we have an interest in curbing that behavior? Yes or no? And the thing is, they don't want to answer that. Like, oh, ban pit bulls, ban them. It's like, why? Why? Why do we want to do that? I think it's like pre-crime, because it's almost like we're doing pre-crime to prevent something that we don't want to prevent. No, first you condemn the act, then you focus on the means, if at all. But the thing is, yeah, they got it completely bass backwards, most of them.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Similarly to the dogs actually attacking somebody or the like. Who's charging these people? It doesn't happen. They
Yeah, it
just
doesn't happen. Yeah.
bite another person and rinse and repeat.
Yeah, the problem with that is, I mean, I always take it like, I don't mean to like bash my own idea, but I think one reason they don't criminalize dog attacks, it's reckless endangerment. There is you can easily connect those dots. There is a clear line of causation or culpability that flows from the dog owner to what happened. Because you know what? If they hadn't adopted the dog in the first place, it wouldn't have happened. So they, IHD referred to it as, they're accomplishing the dog essentially. They're an accomplice. And actually, that's not just a good metaphor. That's literally what it is. They brought this thing into the community and they need to own all the bad outcomes, period. Whether it's attacking people, noise polluting, pissing and shitting everywhere, running in the road and causing car accidents. They need to own that, period. The thing is, there's so much of that if you start criminalizing it, the crime rates, at least on paper, are going to go through the roof. Because if you say, okay, we're going to apply, reckless endangerment laws to all these bad outcomes, it's like, well, congratulations, your reckless endangerment stats just went up 10,000%.
If that's what it is, then that's what it is.
Well,
though.
yeah, I guess, yeah, if that's what it is. I mean, I believe that's what it is. Because that's what it is. Because,
the stats go up because that's not a bad thing, I guess,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and I think raises the thing too is you're also looking to say, okay, because that's what a lot of these dog people say. Well, going after dog owners, they just don't want it to happen at all. They just want to be above the rules, period. But they say, well, it doesn't undo the harm. But no, it does a couple of things. It prevents all these repeat offenses, which are most of them. And also serves as a deterrent because right now they're doing these things because there's no disincentive to doing so.
That's why people don't rob banks or kill people or steal things because
people are going to do. You say, well, people do those things anyway. But even in my case, because that's why I hate these people. They're all liars because they'll say that. Like going after dog owners doesn't accomplish anything. Well, because it's not going to unmaul the kid, right? So I said, here's a rhetorical question of the day. You know what? I'm sick of those 3 murder mutts. I fucking had it. I'm going to drive over there and shoot all 3 of them dead. That is what I'm going to do, hypothetically. I'm not self-incriminating. Those same people would say they would say that guy, meaning me, he needs to go to prison. He needs to go to prison so he won't harm any more innocent pupperinos and to set an example for the rest of these dog haters. They listen up, the rest of you. You don't want to wind up like him because his life as he knows it is now over. But the thing is, it's like, that's why I hate them so much, because they have this big double standard. And that's like, why didn't somebody delete those 3 dogs? It came up on the Nextdoor thread. They people in your neighborhood have guns? Yeah, I mean, I do. Why didn't I shoot them? Because you know what? I mean, again, unless it's a self-defense, would I shoot them to prevent being deleted? Yes. But would I just shoot them just for the sake of shooting them? No. Why not? Because, I don't want a long stay in a gray bar hotel. And that's what can happen if you do that. And that's the regime they want. They want it so there's no protection from the thing, but tons of protection for the thing. And that needs to change. They say, you know what? If dogs and dog owners, if there's no protection from them, then there should be none for them. Shit, fuck shooting the dogs. I should be able to shoot the owner too. I mean, I can't. I mean, I can. I'll go to prison, but because they're protected. Enough. We were discussing Alien. I want your opinion on this, but I think a while back we were discussing political paradigms. And what exactly is this? And I think this is a pretty good example of anarcho-tyranny, which is not a well-defined political scenario. I think there's different definitions of it, but my interpretation of it is where you've got one group of people can just they're not regulated by the state. They can basically do whatever they want with no consequences. But everybody else, or at least another group of people, is very, very tightly regulated. You basically have a police state sitting on top of those people. So essentially you've got a big sort of legal and political double standard. And I think this is a pretty good example of that, right? Because you got anarchy for them. They can just do whatever they want. But the rest of us are restrained.
Well, I don't think I've heard that term before, anarcho-tyranny. Is that a new category you're making up?
No, actually, if you could Google it. The thing is, it's not. I don't know if there really is any such thing as anarcho-tyranny. I don't think. I don't know if it's recognized by political scientists. And there's different definitions of it. But yeah, if you Google it, you probably find a few different definitions. But it kind of seems like that's, what it is. That, again, it's anarchy for them. They can do whatever they want. But tyranny for the rest of us.
Anarcho-tyranny is a form of a dystopia state where they permit or encourage anarchy or chaos in limited form. The decent people are suppressed.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds about right.
I learned something new.
But
yeah, learn something new every day. Well, that was a point I made too. Was I actually blogged about this back in 2012? Because one thing you see. And this is one of the big ironies here is that, okay, so you basically have anarchy for dog people because it's part of their sense of entitlement. They'd say, look, Fido and I are just so amazing and so special. We're not subject to any rules. We can strip all your rights and you just need to suck it up and deal with it, right? Again, I, as a dog person, can just do whatever I want with zero consequences. I have, if not the right, the power to do so. It's like, okay. But then what happens is when in an arrangement like that, you say, okay, you get this one elite group of people that's above the rules. What happens when they turn on each other? And you see this happen a lot. Again, one big example is the pit bull people versus the mop dog people, because these same people, like let's say they've got a husky, right? So they got this husky, it's probably bit people, it barks all night, it's running at large all the time, and they're like, yeah, you don't like it, drop dead, right? But then what happens is when, let's say, some at-large pit bulls delete the husky, now they want a pit bull ban, right? But the point I make to those people is that, look, this is where I actually agree with the pit bull people, because they're making what amounts to an equal protection argument, sort of, because they're saying the same thing. They're saying, look, as a dog person, I can't be regulated, right? Because they have the same narrative that these other dog people have. Right? If you go back, even when I still have it up on a screen, the 10 Commandments, it just isn't limited to dog breeds that some people happen to like. This applies to all dogs. Okay. And that's the point I made is like, look, that's the kind of thing that happens, right? Like mop dogs being deleted by pit bulls. That's the kind of thing that happens when, you have a group of people that's just above the rules. They turn on each other because they can't be held accountable either. Right. So, and you see it also with, the service dog people. Right? Because you have these service dog people, quote unquote, right? And they say, like, they would never sign my draft letter. Like, I put up that draft letter, said, put your name on it, sign it, and send it to your legislatures. Basically, what we're asking for is we want service dog activities to be a permitted activity, right? You now need a hard card ID to take your dog to McDonald's, okay? And they're like, oh no, I'm this really special, super entitled dog person. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I get the last word on everything. Period. End of discussion. So suck it, peasant. Then they'll say, oh, see that dog over there? That's a fake service dog. Kick it out. Like, do these people hear themselves? Do they hear themselves? That person is saying the same thing that you say. They're claiming the same rights and powers and privileges that you are. When I say you, I'm addressing the proverbial service dog person. They're saying the same thing. They're saying, look, I say Rover is a service dog, and that makes Rover a service dog. End of conversation. But that's, what happens is all these protections and privileges and powers they've agitated for are now working against them. Because they're being fucked over by other dog people, which I find actually entertaining as hell. I guess I'm just a bad person. Like, again, one of these mop dogs gets deleted by a pit bull. I say, what do you say to somebody like that? It's like, look, your dog got into a fight and lost. You should have gotten a tougher dog. Isn't that what they always do? They always blame the victim. That's your fault. And actually, I mean it because, again, you've agitated for this regime.
Anarcho-Tyranny is a really delightful term.
Yeah, well, that's there's not a good. I think it's not recognized by political scientists. There's no person.
I think it actually is. I see articles from like the last couple of years of them using it.
Yeah,
it's pretty fun.
That I don't think it's recognized, and there's different definitions of it. I mean, my interpretation of it is where you have, again, a big sort of political power differential where, one group of people can just do whatever they want, and everybody else is oppressed. So, and I think what we have here is a version of that.
Either out of laziness or malevolent motive.
Well, they agitate for these laws, or they agitate for, again, not either no rules or non-enforcement of rules. Because you talk about too is like this is an area where laws are either ignored or they're written to protect the perp. One thing I like to point out, because Kidder, remember a while back we were discussing the barking rules in your town. And I remember saying it's like when you said I think it's like a 3-minute consecutive disruption. I'm like, that's actually really good. I mean, where you live is way above average. I guess the only legit amount is 0, but still, it's like way better than most places. And because what they do is, right, when you have, a big barking dog problem, and here's how these things happen. So what do? Right, they being, say, the county commissioners or the state legislatures or whatever. They go to the animal people and they say, okay, what do we do about this? But the problem is the animal people, these are dogs first people. So they say, oh, let us write the laws. We'll take care of it. But what they do is they write the laws to protect the dog and the dog owner, right? So in many places, like your quote anti-barking law, it does nothing to address noise pollution. It is not about noise mitigation. It's about protecting noisy dogs. So what do? Well, they put in these ridiculously long, consecutive disruption rules. Like it's got to bark for a half hour, like literally nonstop. And they also put in a multiple household rule. Well, you'll need 3 or 4 different parties to complain about the dog before anything's done. So what they've done is, in addressing the problem, they've just essentially protected the perps. They make it harder to go after, right? But if you were to leave a special treat for the dog, you'd go to prison. So, but that's the kind of thing they do. But they don't.
We talked about earlier. You need the officer to actually enforce the law.
Yeah.
And if they do not enforce it, you might as well forget about it.
Yeah.
That's why it took me probably 8 months to finally get these assholes cited.
Yeah.
Because nobody would enforce the law.
Nobody would enforce. Well, that's the other problem too, is but think about it though. Imagine having to jump through all those hoops and still nothing's done. Because that happens too. You jump through all these hoops. And the same thing with that Heather Ginsburg person that I spoke, not the last time, it's the time before, in San Antonio, where, she's being terrorized by a next door neighbor's dogs. And the thing is that, one point she makes is how difficult it is to complain. Because if you call authorities, like, I'm being attacked by a neighbor's dog in my own property, they're like, well, you got to come down to our office and swear out an affidavit and have it notarized. And even after jumping through all those hoops, so first they make it, and it's intentional, they make it very, very difficult to complain. I mean, to make a formal complaint. But even when you jump through all the hoops, they still don't do anything. So she's like, okay, I dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. I went out. I took a day off of work to get all this done, but they're not solving the problem. The dogs are still, running loose and terrorizing the neighborhood. Nothing's been done. But that goes back.
File it away in the round file, and then nothing gets done.
Yeah, file 13.
Yeah, they literally just put it in the paper grinder right in front of you and say, all right, it's been filed.
Yep. Yeah. Put it straight into the shredder. But the dog people agitate for these laws and these policies because they also, insert themselves into these organizations. So it's a kind of thing like, particularly animal control agencies and police departments, code enforcement and the like. So when you call to complain about a dog, they see you as the problem, right? The dog's not the problem, you are. Kind of like if you look at, commandment number 3, thou shalt realize that each and every dog and his keeper is the epitome of absolute perfection and wonderfulness. So what does that mean? Like, how is that expressed in real life? Well, it's expressed this way. Going to say, look, the dog and his owner are both perfect. So if somebody complains about a dog, they're either they deserved what happened to them, or they're just making it up. Like, there's no credibility to this complaint. So we're going to ignore it, even if the laws stipulate that an action be taken. So the kind of like, if you pass BSL laws and you call in, it's like, my neighbor's got an illegal pit bull. They're going to think, no, they're going to think that you're just being racist, right?
So I think this brings us back to public opinion.
Yeah.
So maybe we should segue here to talking about ways to alter public opinion.
Yeah, so you don't think that blowing up the Best Friends Animal Society headquarters would shift that in one direction or the other?
Well, that would make dogsbite.org look really milquetoast, which could help
very tamed.
Dogbite.org.
Yeah.
Not that I'm advocating that anyone do
Yeah, I'm
those
snorking.
types
So,
of
but
things.
yeah.
Somebody on the Discord, we were talking a little bit on the Discord about documentary films maybe that would help shift public opinion, and then also PSAs. Maybe we could make it a YouTube channel devoted to xenophobia, and then we could interview people with xenophobia, and they could tell their stories. And that might, after a few years of that might help shift public opinion.
Yeah.
And then if we can shift public opinion, then law enforcement officers might start doing their jobs.
Yeah. Well, they will respond. I mean, if it does shift, it's a saying the proverbial, the zeitgeist, the Overton window needs to shift. It needs to be centered over something more reasonable. I wanted to do, I think one problem is like people focus too much on dog attacks, which I mean are a big problem. But I think dog noise pollution is an issue that doesn't get covered enough. And I don't have my act together because I have limited time and resources to invest in this hobby. I have a day job and other interests, but dog noise pollution is really toxic. And I think again, it's another one of these double standards because even dog people know that noise pollution is a problem, and everybody does, because it's really bad for your mind and your body. And people have made firsthand testimony to that. I think coming up with talking to experts, victim testimony, maybe even people who are ex-dog trainers, even people that are, in the animal control or law enforcement space that are at least sympathetic to us or solving dog problems in society. Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, I'd like to get more people. Talking to you guys is great. I really enjoy these segments, but I'd like to get some folks into the space, law enforcement people, and if it's retired or ex, victims with as I always ask people, it's like, what's your narrative? Like, why are you in the space? What interests you? And I find that interesting. Like, what had to happen to you to go over to the dark side?
Well, psychology experts too.
Yeah.
Who can talk about stress, and they can talk about all of the harms from dog barking and all of the harms from people walking their dogs down the sidewalk and making the fearful people turn around, have to go the other direction, walking their dogs in grocery stores up and down the aisles.
Yep.
Without a care in the world.
Yeah.
I think experts could have a lot to say about that. So that should be, we don't hear, I don't think we hear about experts on these topics. So that would be, I think that would be a good win if we could start getting some experts talking about.
Yeah, and law enforcement, lawyers. The thing too is, the thing is that the experts, and going back to what I was saying about why the legal and political system is so skewed in favor of these people. It's because they go to a lot of the quote experts are basically just dog cultists, right? We need an expert who's either sympathetic to us or at least neutral, like they're at least objective about it, because that's it. And I hate dogs covers this stuff too. It's like, they bring, say there's a dog attack or somebody, they're debating dog laws or something, and all the experts are all dog worshipers, right? It's kind of like you're debating, like, say, I don't know, secondhand smoke, but all the experts are like tobacco company executives. Because not only are these people, they're not only ideologically motivated, but they're often economically motivated as well. So that's one reason why it's so skewed, because pretty much all the experts are, part of the mutt matrix, and they lie. They lie.
There are some nonprofit organizations advocating for quietness, and I think they might know some experts on this.
Yeah.
Like here's one called quietcommunities.org. I think there's another one that talks about all kinds of quiet issues.
Yeah. The only thing is like
noise pollution issues.
Yeah. I was following a site like that once. The problem is that you're trying to find somebody who is willing to take on the mutt matrix or speak out against it. That's a challenge. So
yeah,
because otherwise you get, and some of these dog fanatics may have infiltrated those organizations also. It's very pervasive, because they'll say, oh yeah, we need to ban fireworks and leaf blowers and parakeets and all this stuff. But dogs bark. It's what they do. Just get used to it.
I can hear the neighbor's cat meowing from here. It's really keeping my sleep up.
Yeah. Watch it, man. You might get meowed out of your house.
Yeah.
When you say something like that out loud, you realize how ridiculous it is.
Oh, I think I found it. Noisefree.org. I think they're the big one.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Am I right there? Noise Free. Have you heard of that one?
I don't know. Maybe. I was following some of those, and I think at least one of them was coming out against, dog noise. The thing is, somebody like that is good because you think about it. Pretty much it goes back to double standards. Like, roosters. Well, it's one reason why they zone out farm animals, because they make too much noise, supposedly. Although I'd rather have a rooster next door than a mutt. Even though I guess technically a rooster can crow whenever, but I had a neighbor within earshot a while back who had a rooster, and you would hear it occasionally, but it was nothing like some of these barky mutts. It was, that's what they do, is like they always deflect onto something else. If you complain about barky dogs, they're like, what about that thing over there? It's a distraction. And, the difference is, it's like, well, I listen to that for 2 minutes a week, and I listen to dogs bark 12 hours a day. It's a pretty big difference, but yeah, it's a good thought. And I wanted to get like a time before I did a shout out to, there are some folks in the community who are like ex-dog trainers. And those people have a very interesting narrative. Like, okay, this was I'm assuming it was a vocation. It was their day job. What turned you against them? Because again, that's sort of like, now you got an expert opinion from somebody who's quit the cult, right? Like, if you want to learn about Scientology, and you could argue maybe those people are biased too, but you know what? Maybe we do need people who are biased in our direction. Maybe talk about moving the Overton window. Maybe we need to be unfair in the other direction to try to get that Overton window to kind of shift over to something reasonable. But yeah, no, it's a great idea. It's interesting, since when I first got into the space, I had, my blog community was more, I guess, diverse in that sense, because it was interesting. I had, one man he was a retired he was an electrical engineer, but he specialized in, speaker systems and microphones and the like. So he was really interesting. This guy, he was a dog hater. Man, this guy hated him. And but he understood how like sound, propagated, what sound can do to the human body. Older guy though, this is 10 years ago, he was in his 70s. I think he's passed away. He was kind of funny. There's another man we had who was a retired police officer from Oakland. I think he'd retired to Arizona, and he was always interesting to talk to, particularly about self-defense cases and use of force arrangements and the like. I think he may have passed away also. There's another woman we had who was, an ex-dog trainer, and she was interesting to talk to. I don't know what happened to her, but having some of those like diversity of backgrounds and and ideas is really good to have. And victim testimony is good. I'd love to have somebody who barely survived a pit bull attack on here, but somebody not a Jacqueline Durand, because she's basically a lost soul as far as I'm concerned. Kidder and I discussed her last week. It's kind of a shame. I don't have any animosity towards her, but I think she's actually hurting things. She's not coming out against any aspect of the dog cult. She's also sort of projecting this, somebody used the term toxic positivity. Like, oh yeah, everything's just great. No, it isn't. Sorry. And she could, her narrative could be important. If she was to just warn people, it's like, yeah, and maybe pet sitting pit bulls or other problematic dog breeds, not recommended. But she won't do that. She could, if she saved one other person from a fate similar to hers, it would be worth it. Like, she could really help. I even like to think myself, even with these, discussions we have, like I'm always grilling Kidder on his situation. But the thing is, that's useful information, because you're in a situation like that. Like, you've got the dog terrorist, terrorizing the neighborhood. What can you do to solve the problem, right? And I think if it just helps one person, it's worth it, right? Or even my narrative. My back when I was blogging, my number one blog was the desist letter I said to my neighbor. And it was interesting because I'd written that and sent it to him before I got into this space, before I started blogging anyway. So it wasn't even written as a blog, but that blog got 36,000 reads. And I'm thinking, even if only 1% of the people who read that got something useful out of it, that makes it so totally worth doing. Because that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to help people. I'd like to improve quality of life. I'd like to, curb some of these bad outcomes. That should be the goal. Not just, I piss and moan about it, but I like to think that, or even with the draft letter. Because, I don't know if anybody had ever put anything like that out there. Fill it out, sign your name to it and send it in. I've actually done things like that in the past and gotten results. And that's what we want. We want positive results. So, but yeah, it's a good thought. Yeah, I definitely want to get people like that into the community, and maybe a separate YouTube channel that everybody works on might be a good idea. Like a collaborative effort. Because like I said, one reason I wanted to do these chats is like I want people to work together, because the adversary is organized, okay? And maybe it's not behind one organization, but a Best Friends Animal Shelter. Or society, rather. Right? Maybe it used to be Shelter Out, whatever. You know who I'm talking about. The ex-Scientology people. They work together. So, yeah. Yeah. Hey, guys, we've been on for like 2.25 hours. I think I'm going to close this out. But it's been
we just keep talking.
Yeah, my voice is starting to go. I'm a little bit better during the day, because when I do these during the week, it's kind of late here. So it kind of starts to kind of infringe on my bedtime. I start to kind of fade. So I guess on a weekend day, I have a little more energy, I guess. The sun is shining and everything. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to close it out. So anyway, thanks for joining both of you. It's been interesting. It's been very informative, entertaining as usual. Thanks again for joining. So
Yeah, thanks for hosting this.
Yeah. We'll keep doing them. So any case, this is Animal Uncontrol. And as always, drum roll, people first. Bye, guys.
We'll see ya.